actually recorded it in Word.
That's awesome, man.
Outstanding.
So the funny thing is we had like a little family get together, which we weren't supposed to have because we're under COVID lockdown, but my family and some members of my family end up getting tests pretty regularly because they teach. And my brother-in-law is an awesome drummer. And before he left, he goes, dude, we got to play just some Def Leppard. I go, oh my God, I don't know any Def Leppard. And so it was awesome because he learned how to play Sissy Struts by the Meters like within a second. It was incredible because it was a really tough drumming song, right? And I ended up learning Photograph in like, it took me like two seconds to figure it out. Yeah, and that's how, that's how it landed on our playlist.
It's just no biggie.
Yeah, no biggie.
You can play. You just get the sheet music right there on your iPad and just
sheet music. What sheet music?
I watched the
song.
Well, it's funny. I watched my daughter. She did during the week. She had something like on her iPhone where it will slowly move the music up for you automatically. Mm-hmm. And so she played Karma Police by Radiohead for me. And she just did it. And I was like, yeah, that rocks. My daughter's doing Radiohead.
Yeah, it's like doing ERP. Once you've done ERP, a few implementations, it's easy. Easy. IoT, right?
Yeah, it's easy.
It's like you know how to just jam, put things together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. By all means,
by ear.
Bring your IT security and copy paste and go into the OT environment. It works like a charm.
There you go.
What's OT?
Over the top.
Oh.
Oh, fun's over. Mark's here.
Uh-oh. Shit just got real.
And this was his idea. Hurry up, dude.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you doing? Sorry.
Hey.
For being late. That's typical from Spanish people, right? To be late.
I love that. He had to do the little plug by lowering his camera. Slick move, buddy.
I love. You saw all of his reference architecture and designs behind him on his right-hand side.
It's all nice. Right there.
Exactly.
Everything you need. The plans to the Death Star are right there.
You're right. Made by a 4-year-old.
So, interesting topic for this week. It's supply chain and logistics and offline. We had an interesting start to this topic, right? So, Mark, this is yours. So, bring us in.
So, the last episode I participated was about business successful projects, business cases. And actually, one of the successful projects where I have participated with real business cases that make sense for companies sometimes has been on supply chain and logistics. And that related with one of the offline discussions or comments that we had from Rich, who is not here, was that the original, when Kevin Ashton coined the concept of the Internet of Things, was super related with logistics and supply chain. So I thought that it was a good idea to talk about this topic that actually, for my point of view, maybe it will be very technical, but it brings three things. It brings a use case that actually it's very well known by companies that they lose money and they are not very optimal or efficient. Second, there is technology that it's getting into the right price at the right and connectivity that it's also on the same line. And third, there are business cases that with all of this, understanding where are the inefficiencies and with the right technology makes sense for the companies, so they are buying. And there are some big companies already using those supply chain projects as Airbus or DHL or others that we can mention later that are public that go towards that direction. But actually, I would like to know more about what do you think about supply chain, logistics, IoT, and coffee.
I was going to say, guys, it's been all in the news too. The the big thing is the cold chain technology needed for the vaccine distribution in the United States because of the requirements for the vaccine. Oh yeah, and they're saying that they're having a hard time. That the actual refrigerators that are required to keep the vaccines at a certain temperature, they're not regular refrigerators, of course. So not every CVS or Walgreens has them. And I think from a logistics perspective, that's what I've just been hearing a ton about, I guess, all over the news, is all the craziness and the requirements that it seems like they can get the vials to the locations, but then what? And then storage, and then moving the actual vaccine liquid into a syringe. They haven't figured out all the details yet. So I'm like, okay,
See,
they're already giving shots overseas. So, hey.
Well,
see, Stephanie, this is where you have to sandwich supply chain management between supply chain and logistics, because there are three different terms. So management would have answered that question. I've transported the vaccines in the temperature and status that they should have been in. Now what? Oh, you don't have the right refrigerator.
Yeah.
That's what we have to manage it.
So much for the management, right?
Yeah.
We tried. We got it there, and then we failed.
They haven't thought everything through.
I also saw that it was interesting that the dry ice company, there's one in the Northeast, that there's a shortage of dry ice because of the fact that we are all virtual, or all at home. So a lot of us are ordering food more than ever to be delivered to our homes. So that dry ice has been, the volume of dry ice that's going to all of those companies is now competing with the vaccine distributors, that they need dry ice for the cold chain kind of trust in the vaccine. So it's interesting when you start to dig into it. I know that there are a lot of smart people looking at this, but I love hearing all of the details about it because it's so interesting, and it's definitely relevant for our supply chain logistics discussion.
But it's not winter in the US right now. There is no snow there, like real snow.
Some places.
Areas.
That's not cold enough, man.
Texas got snow this week. Big Bend National Park and all that area got snow this week.
We need more climate change to bring temperatures even further down. So here, let me read Rick's comment here that started the controversy. So he said, one thing to mention in this session is that the original IoT definition was, air quotes, actually he actually had quotes there, a supply chain definition, mostly RFID for tracking shit. That's his words, not mine. Of course, that failed for a variety of reasons, mostly cost. So I thought this was really interesting because then we went into RFID, and then Mark, you and Rick kind of butted heads on that notion, and that's how you arrived at that Kevin Ashton quote. So I thought that was easy, but maybe interesting. So maybe let's talk about the nature of IoT in quote unquote supply chain and logistics, because I think right off the bat we have a conceptual disconnect that maybe we can help our listeners work through. Because
is RFID IoT? Huh? I mean, is RFID, not all RFID deployments were even connected to the internet. So right. Is it even, I don't know, in my book.
Oh, did you just say?
Oh, well.
Oh.
Seriously, look, people got creative. People got creative, and they would take the readers and put in a truck and throw a modem, and all of a sudden what's connected to the internet. But, if I'm trying to count, how many pairs of jeans do I have in a retail store or inventory in a shop? That stuff wasn't connected. So is RFID IoT?
Does IoT have to be connected to the open internet to be IoT?
No. Why? Okay, touche.
Okay.
Hey, do they still use the term intranet?
Internet protocol of things?
Intranet.
Oh, so you know what? As the father of not only IoT and mobility, but also the father of supply chain and, logistics, I have a couple of comments. So back then, I spent a whole lot of my time building supply chain and logistics systems. Actually, I built something at Microsoft. I built a product, one of the products I created at Microsoft, and it was for, if you'll remember, Windows Mobile, way back in the early, late 2000s. How did we do what you guys are talking about back then? And actually, it's how we still do it today. The earliest Windows Mobile devices that got traction were rugged enterprise type devices from Motorola, Intermec, Zebra, all that kind of stuff. And they were barcode scanners. That's how supply chain and logistics is actually still done today. And that was the emerging, growing thing. You had, before that, you had Telzon devices that were not really that smart at all to scan. But I think what we're trying to get to when we say, how do we migrate what we do with supply chain and logistics today? Because I built that. I spent time building the systems for FedEx and for Frito-Lay and pickup and delivery. But yes, it's based on humans and barcode scanning. I scan items when inputs are coming into my warehouse, right? And I put them in bins. And then I have pickers in the warehouse who's running around, like the ones at Amazon where they're running literally to go scan bins.
No, they have robots.
Yeah, well, but there's people competing against robots. So the difference, because I built these systems too, it was all based on Windows Mobile back then, because that's what people use for rugged devices. And not only do those things connect to your backend systems, and in my case, I use this replication technology to talk to SQL Server. The Amazon ones are unique because they have a countdown timer on the user interface that says you have this many seconds to run to the next place to beat the robot. So it's a little different. If you've ever read stories about people can't take bathroom breaks or eating and they're exhausted after their shift. So you go to a warehouse, you go to a bin, you pick, you get your stuff, you stage all the items, and then you load them onto the truck, right? And the truck's like, did I get them all onto the truck? And then there's that logistics. What's the route that the driver has got to take during that day to deliver the items, right? Whatever, if you look at a higher level, whether it's Amazon or UPS or FedEx or airports in their systems, it's still the same technology. It's lasers. Items are flying across. Lasers are shooting at them on barcode scanners today. And so there was this thinking, and it's funny because they almost kind of happened at the same time. The rise of barcodes was in full swing, and that's what won the day. Now, you don't win forever. As Steve Jobs told us, the future is long. But the talk about RFID back at the very end of the 90s and the early 2000s, I certainly remember that time. I certainly remember Walmart got excited about RFID tags, and they were going to try to force all the people who sell products to them to adopt RFID tags instead of barcode scanning because they thought that would be more efficient. And
how did that work out?
It didn't work out. No. And you know why, right? It was too expensive. Remember, everything comes back to economics in the end. Yeah. And so there was this crazy idea. We're going to put an RFID tag on a bottle of Head & Shoulders shampoo. Well, it blows up the pricing model of that bottle of shampoo, just like all those early consumer IoT devices where the putting on compute, storage, networking, and stuff on an IoT toaster exploded the BOM cost of the toaster so that no one could afford to buy it anymore. And that's why consumer IoT failed miserably.
So and still today.
The only RFID tags I see at the store that I still see in use are at the razors. I guess because razors are so expensive, they have a problem with theft. And they usually have them in cages, little plastic. So as soon as you lift and you pull it out, it's counting or it knows that you've acquired that particular. But I haven't seen it anywhere else. I haven't.
Yeah, maybe in the CD rooms or books. You haven't seen these silver labels inside books or.
Sometimes. Yeah.
But it was too expensive. And the funny part is that today they are still too expensive for that business case from the 90s. So
they kept thinking the price was going to get down low enough that you could do a per unit deal.
Well, and the other wave that came in is, I think it was maybe even 5 years plus ago, they started really talking about beacon technology.
Yep.
And, you know, some of the infrastructure that's required in the building where assets are moving in and out, and it knowing all of these different characteristics of people and things coming in and out.
My nightmares are coming back in terms of, what was it? RTLS.
Yes.
What was it, Rob? Real-time location service, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that's ultra wideband. Actually, the interesting part of the RFID is that you don't need a battery. It's a battery-less technology. And actually, what happens is that you have like, I don't know how to call it, like doors. And when this tag that it's batteryless, it's a circuit, gets in between these doors. I don't know how to call it. Maybe you know.
A reader?
Yeah, readers. Well, it's not like, these doors that you see when you get into a shop. Then it electrifies the circuit, and then it sends the ID to the reader, and that's the magic part. No, that with a battery-less circuit, you can get the information. That's really powerful. With NFC, with the near field communication technology that we have on the phones to pay, etc., we also have similar thing. But then you have to be very close to the reader. The nice part of the RFID is that you need to be like some meters from the reader. That's okay.
Yeah.
But then beacons, it's a different technology. So you need battery. Even it longs so long or a lot of years, you need a battery, and it's the same for ultra wideband. So the difference here with NFC or RFID, you need readers like doors or something like that, and when you get through, electrifies the chip. And you get the IDs. With beacons or ultra wideband, you get devices with batteries. So that means that they will die at some point, and the price to change those batteries are people changing batteries. That's super expensive. That's one of the learns that I made on logistics. That the most expensive, it's the people changing batteries in some points. So that's different because the device is telling to the gateways installed around the warehouse or whatever, I'm here and this is my name or my ID. That's as well interesting.
I think it's cool, Marc, how you saw, as you were describing it, it's also you're going through the business case requirements, because so RFID, there's a range, right? And then NFC, there's a range. Then we get into, BLE, beacons, whatever. And, and next thing you know, it's like, full blown something, no different than we would do the narrowband IoT, LoRa, satellite comparison. And it's back to dollars and cents. But the battery killed me in a couple of projects too, of like, so the batteries are going to last a couple of years, and who's going to swap the batteries? Oh, labor, truck rolls, liability, regulation, access. No, thank you. And I said, you're welcome, and walked away with an empty bag.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the tricky part. This is why actually barcodes are still usable, because so they developed the technology to have these ubiquitous barcodes or barcode readers everywhere, like Rob was explaining on the airports and so on. But it's so cheap. The only part is to introduce the barcodes to the places, the right barcode. But it's so cheap and can be automatized that it's almost it's just paper and ink.
Yeah, it's like when Dr. Evil says, "I want sharks with freaking laser beams attached to them." And so lasers and paper, at least so far, have won the day. At least so far.
Yeah.
Did you guys catch? So, and this is public, which is the only time I mentioned brand names. But Arm, Bayer, the German pharmaceutical giant, and Vodafone, they have a partnership using barcodes on a label and effectively transmitting over narrowband IoT with some sort of eSIM or iSIM that's embedded into the label. And that's also some real challenges for them. And it was an ease of use thing, because, hey, we're already printing labels to ship things, right? You had a process in place. It's more, how do we adapt this intelligent label into how we ship things. And from what I hear, it's going pretty good. It is scaling, they say.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
Technology on warehouses is incredible. So I have seen super amazing projects, but I like to keep it simple. So on the other hand, it's so one of the requirements of this use case of logistics and supply chain, it's to understand what you need. If you need to know what is the package all the time, and this package will go worldwide from all to any country on the world, you have some requirements, specific requirements. If you only need to know that my package is in warehouse A or warehouse B or warehouse C, then maybe barcodes, RFID, that's okay. You don't need anything else. But if you need to know real-time location, or like, okay, let me know more or less what it is, or not only on my warehouse, I also want to know in what shop it is, for example, no, or more things, no?
I think sometimes, I think there's one of the interesting companies is Roambee. I've actually been following them for quite some time, but they, what they do and what they've done well from a use case perspective is really identify some of the high value asset tracking requirements that are needed for shipping goods from, the U.S. to overseas. And it's not just about tracking the actual asset itself, but it's also other variables in data that's being pulled on the asset that makes it interesting. Because I think if you simplify it and it's just about tracking the asset, there's a lot of competitors out there that are doing that today. But when you're starting to do a little bit more with the asset, if it's a high value asset, let's just say it's cold chain technology, and there are very strict requirements on temperature or moisture or whatever it is, then that's where it gets really interesting. And they're doing some really cool stuff with the airline industry. And you have to develop the relationships not only with the supply chain and logistic companies like FedEx and DHL and those, but also with the airline industry itself, because a lot of those packages people don't realize are put onto commercial flights and put in as part of the cargo. And so it's not all just shipped, on a UPS plane or a FedEx plane. There are a lot of different ways that packages are moving overseas through commercial.
Well, you have to think that so you know what, Rob, I might actually be as a granddaddy of IoT as you, because look this up after the episode, after we recorded. There's a company called PNP, Ports and Portals, that I was the chief strategist and architect for. This is back in 2000. And it was a startup that was started by Hutchinson Whampoa. They're one of the largest port operators in the world, right? In particular in Hong Kong, they operate the Hong Kong port. And, the thing is that we've been trying to do this stuff for a long time, this whole track and trace logistics transport stuff for a long time. And back then we were actually developing and designing a lot of the stuff that we're trying to do today. We're way ahead of the game in terms of designing and conceptualizing solutions. Where we had trouble was when we tried to actually build it out and implement it. And one of the things that we realized was, and this was a big flaw in this strategy, and I was there to help build out the strategy and vet it. I wasn't there. I didn't come up with the original idea, just to be clear. But one of the things that we discovered is that you really need to have endpoint readiness. What we discovered is there were no computers anywhere. The penetration rate was very, very low. I think I've brought this up before. But the other thing is that when you think of logistics and transport, it's not just air. We've been bringing up, FedEx and UPS. Ground, there's a lot of different modes in ground transportation. Air transportation is one thing. Why you go air, there's a lot of reasons why. A lot of reasons why you don't. There's rail, and there's also overseas, the shipping. Right. Yeah. And so what becomes really complex, especially in global supply chain, is multimodal, what you might call multimodal logistics and transportation. And so, based on what you guys have been saying so far, seems like there's this progression that we've made from, IoT really originating from wanting to know where things are, to Marc, what you were saying about now certain things being valuable enough where it makes economic sense to have these things let you know where they are and what they are and what condition they're in, right? Because back then we were just really concerned about where things were, and there was tons of value in that because they were losing shipping containers or they are still losing shipping containers like crazy. And here's the other crazy thing. You know how many shipping, those cargo ships go down every year, and why we continue to build so many?
Pirates?
No, they sink. There's like weird stuff happening in the ocean that sinks.
Yeah, the waves that you have there.
I thought you were going to say piracy, theft.
Well, that's one, but they sink. The
Sparrow.
Yeah, the ships break apart and they dump their entire cargo into the depths of the ocean. Yeah.
Leonard, to answer the question
his new car that was being shipped from China to Europe, the ship was sink. So his car played 6 more months.
You'll be stunned, and those are the things you discover.
And the answer is cost. What is the lowest cost for me to get all these cargo? How do you call the cargo boxes? Not trailers. Shipping containers. Yeah. How do I get a few thousand of these from across an ocean? And
and then how do you prove that your particular item was in a container on a ship that went down? So
let me tell you an interesting story.
No?
So actually, the target of this story that we are talking today are not the logistic companies. Those logistic companies don't want to pay for these IoT solutions.
It's the insurance guys.
No, but let me tell you. Well, yeah, give me a sec. The logistic companies, all the time that I talk with them, the biggest and the smallest, they don't want to be transparent with their customers. They don't want to let them know how shit they treat their packages and containers and whatever they transport, or how they lose things. So they don't want to be transparent. This is why they don't have computers. They don't, and so on. And so they are okay with barcodes because
accountability is not necessarily something that they want to push. I mean, it's funny, but you can follow the driver that's delivering your package to your house, but you don't really know what condition your package is in, or is it really in there? Are they going to get there tonight? So, but like for me, like at my ranch here, this is the last stop in the day for UPS. So I can see them driving all over Kerrville, all around the other cities, all around me. And they choose to come out here last because it's all ranches and they have a hard time getting into the gates. It's a lot more driving, a lot more like manpower. They have to get out of the truck. They can't just drive.
I just love it when people say, when FedEx or UPS comes to my ranch.
Okay, but lately they've been
when they come to South Fork.
Lately, everything's being, I guess, because it's a busy season, they've been leaving everything outside the front gate, which is on a busy state highway. No. So I'm like, okay, it's going to be an interesting Christmas. Who's going to take our packages? Who's going to keep driving?
So two things, and I'm going to bring, I think one of the earlier episodes when we'll talk about killer apps. So I think, and you guys mostly, even Marc would agree, that if we look at supply chain and logistics from an IoT perspective, I think we're very likely going to find that there's a lot of point solutions to be able to track all of the attributes we can think of, right? So from location, vibration, humidity, did it get dropped? Did it get to, like, that stuff has been out there.
Yep.
And it being inspired by Marc's comment of transparency or lack thereof, one of the things that we're missing is that very few, especially the mid-sized and small companies, deploy this solution and try to integrate that into a backend to drive more automation. Because yes, there are people that just want to know where is it, and that's all I need. That's all I care about. But when you get into complex supply chain companies, you're like, let's just go pharmaceutical or even oil and gas or thermoplastics. The killer app is to be able to have all of this data integrated into other systems of records, so you can automate certain things. And I know I've read about people even integrating weather data models into their supply chain, because if I can avoid a delay, that means different things, down the chain. So I just wanted to say that out loud, because we hear it a lot on the endpoint side, but personally, I don't hear too much about the back end orchestration bring that together.
But that's the CRM of the company, right?
They have what you're describing back 25 years ago, we call global visibility. And here's the challenge. You have these dudes called middlemen, 3PLs and freight forwarders, who their gold is data. They're the data intermediaries of the transport and logistics world. They don't want you to have that data. If you're going to get it, it's going to cost a ton. That's why, and by the way, everything that you just said has IBM written all over it, because when I was at IBM, we were doing a lot of that stuff. And they're still trying to do that now with TradeLens. And I could have advised them and told them, look, this is not as easy as you think it is. Just putting a blockchain out there, you're not going to get global visibility and a single system of record for global transportation and logistics. And the carriers don't really necessarily want that either. Some of them do, but they have very valuable relationships with 3PLs that do a lot of cargo consolidation, and they have a value, right? And so they're like middleware, and that's like the biggest challenge. But one of the interesting things that one of the things that you've kind of triggered in my mind is maybe there's this idea of having an OTT for this stuff, where as we migrate to the economics of letting things let you know about it and where they are, you can leapfrog and supplant this middle layer that's preventing global visibility, or at least let's say public global visibility. I don't know whether or not, I don't know how you sustain that. That could be a very challenging operating and governance model to design and implement. But anyways, something to think about. This stuff is not easy. It's not as easy. Global visibility. I know tons of supply chain companies that are trying to do this. It's funny, over the years, I listen to now and go, we did that a long time ago. It wasn't that easy, And so it's important for companies.
Leonard, I was going to say that it's interesting because you also think about the different pieces of the chain.
Yeah.
Those who are building the product, are they liable? Do they care about the risk of those products? It's generally the distributors, and especially for the larger companies, there's just a whole list of companies that are part of that value chain that are in the distribution side of that.
Yep.
But I'm wondering, you were talking about the fact that the shippers they don't want that. They don't want to pay for that service. The consumers don't want to pay for the service. Who pays for the service? So I think when you look at the supply chain, it's really all comes down to not necessarily a revenue generating model, but more of a cost and efficiency model, because a lot of them are the distributors. It's those middlemen that are the ones that are probably held most accountable, most liable. And from an insurance perspective, the ones that'll be liable if any of those products are damaged, lost, stolen, if the ship goes down or whatever. So I'm wondering if we need to rethink the way that we're really communicating the value proposition, because you got to think about the supply chain. There's a lot of different vendors that are involved from getting that product from point A to the consumer, but the consumer will not pay an add-on fee.
No, but who pays is whoever the shipper is, and it could be a distributor. A distributor could just be a wrapper of it's like an extension of what a shipper is. But a shipper is fundamentally, if you look in an ERP system, is that person that you tag to a purchase order or an order. Yeah, the ship to, the bill to person. They pay. So,
the success stories.
Consumer eventually pays.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking. I think maybe down the road you'll find that some of the products become more expensive because we are attaching some intelligence to that asset when it's being shipped.
Yeah.
But someone's going to end up paying for it, and sometimes they'll tack on. From a mindset perspective, the consumer doesn't know that the costs are going up because of something on the supply chain side. It generally will fly by. But if they know that if the fees are going up because of, some new intelligence that needs to be pulled from that asset as it's being shipped to them, they're going to push back hard,
Yeah, I think it boils down to criticality and economics.
Yeah, so the economics on the B2C supply chain, it's very complicated. So before I say that the logistic companies don't want to share any data, etc., but this is as well because their business model sucks. They go to the dollar, so they sometimes lose money, but they get the job because they need to get some revenues. So that's a problem for them. They cannot invest money. They cannot put more technology there because it doesn't make sense on their business model. On the other hand, for example, if you go to B2C, what I have seen that it's an innovation that for me it's pretty interesting. It was presented some years ago at the Sigfox Connect, and it was kind of a stamp with a super tiny battery that could send like 3-4 messages with Sigfox technology, that it's a low power wide area network technology, and can tell you like approx in 10 miles of distance where is your package. And then when you open it, you get as well, you receive an SMS like, hey, that person received your package.
Yeah.
And that costs like $1. So that's, for example, an innovation that maybe on Amazon or whatever, you can decide to pay $1 extra to understand where is your package out of the supply or the logistic company. On the B2B, there is another story. For example, one of the success stories on B2B on supply chain, it's the returnable assets. So sometimes the goods that are being shipped are not expensive. The vaccines are not expensive. They cost a couple of dollars, or maybe the cost price it's $50. So for Pfizer or whatever, that's nothing. They can produce more millions next month.
Yeah.
But sometimes the problem it's the asset that transport these goods. That's the most expensive thing. So maybe the asset that will transport the vaccines with all the cold chain system, etc., cost $100,000, and the vaccines total that are there are $100.
Mm-hmm.
So about the vaccines, they probably want to know where is that asset, that returnable asset. That means that they pay it once, but they want to use it a lot of times. They want to repeat the trip. So there is a real business case there, and a lot of companies are interested on paying there because they lose a lot of money. I think Leonard was mentioning before that there are companies buying every month. Well, I have experiences of companies buying every month almost €500,000 of these returnable assets because they didn't have more. And actually, they didn't know how many returnable assets they had. So
wow.
One of those examples, Mark, so, IBC containers, which are used to transport, certain types of chemicals. And you're right, the value is actually in that empty container being returned where it needs to go so that they can continue to churn product, because you don't go to your to a store down the street and just buy 10 more pallets of these things. So that's a really good business use case, because if I don't know where these things are, I don't know how I'm going to fulfill the orders, and if I'm not fulfilling orders, I'm not making money. That's a no-brainer right there.
Yeah,
actually,
I think.
Sorry, go.
No, just, as we get closer to the end here, to try to make things really black and white for our audience, the difference in supply chain and logistics, how it's done now versus IoT, most of it's done with people. I mean, what's IoT? We're replacing people from doing things manually. Now the machine's telling us stuff, right? So right now, and obviously IoT, the packages, the steps along the way are telling us automatically that this is happening instead of barcode scanning. It's funny, Mark, you brought up the stamp thing. Yeah, I'm friends with the guy. He used to be our head of marketing. Oh boy, humans. Those dang humans. They get in the way. They really get in the way of my digital twins that are taking over the planet. And this is what you're going to get for your lack of vision.
Twin power.
Yeah, twin power. And twins are going to play a role. You know, if you're watching, I spend half my life kind of looking at the VC world and what's going on, what's hot and everything like that. And so IoT and logistics and supply chain, there's a lot more heat around that right now. Instead of scanning at this place, scanning at the bin, scanning when I received it, scanning when I take, we've all seen the trackers, the tags, the different things. There's thin film batteries, like you mentioned, Mark, that can be put flat on a package and they could talk to us. So they're telling us, instead of someone barcode scanning saying this arrived at your house or this was taken in delivery by a mobile operator, now it's in their inventory to do something with. That's a big thing. Transient, short-lived digital twins of the packages and all the counterparties will probably be a thing that I'm just making up right now. And, they have a short life. They live for a while and then they die, but they have a life cycle. Obviously, digital twins typically we think of a long life cycle and a long digital thread, but there's absolutely no reason why for items and packages, inventory, or things that have short lifetimes and are moving around, you can't use it for that. I think it's exciting. I think back to economics, that's probably what's been holding us back from really going all in with IoT. There is some cellular stuff baked in, some newer 3GPP stuff, specs, where you will be able to get better location automagically just through the cellular network without having to do
you say automagically?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Without having to just do over the top connectivity to find out where am I and stuff like that. Because as we know, part of it's battery life and expense. And so whenever I'm doing something over an IP network, it hurts my battery. If it's just automatically into the network and you can just get pretty close, narrow down with the network, get even closer, maybe with Bluetooth or some things like that. Anyway, there's some interesting things there that at super, super low power that I think will help us. I think it's an exciting space.
Yeah.
And then when you have a returnable asset that needs to live in theory 5 years, for example, so the company, they will need something that lives for 5 years. Yeah. So as you said, you have to go very low power.
Yeah.
Can I walk over? I want to show you guys, before we wrap up, I want to show you something. I just got it from Costco. It was a picture I took that's really relevant.
It's food?
Well, let's see. Suspense.
I expect that he would have like the new Apple pods. What is this?
I can't tell what it is.
Pros. What is that?
Is that a submarine?
Like a lake? A picture of a lake in a mountainous valley?
You know what that is? That's from Moab.
It's
that's
nice.
Mesa. That's Mesa Arch in Canyonlands National Park in Moab. I took that picture this summer.
Oh wow!
Is your picture?
Do that at Costco? You can get blown up.
Yeah, they'll do canvases at Costco just like MPix and other people do. So yeah, I did it at Costco, and so that's like a 30 by 40.
Code?
No,
dude, that is awesome.
Yeah. The other one behind it's a big black and white where I'm trying to do an Ansel Adams looking picture from Sedona, Arizona. But yeah, it was. I think that was like $110 or whatever for a giant 30 by 40 canvas. Costco will even do metal.
No way.
Well. Yeah. So go check them out.
Yeah,
pretty cool stuff.
There, man. Okay.
Do we have sponsors now on the IoT Coffee Talk?
Huh? What?
Do we have sponsors now?
No.
I see. I just saw a banner ad.
Yeah.
That was served.
Hey, David, you want to take us out, bro?
Yes. So thank you for listening to this fun, hopefully interesting banter. Today's topics was supply chain, logistics, and a bunch of stuff with IoT. Do not forget to like us And I hope you like us. And if you like us, tell your friends and subscribe at IoTCoffeeTalk.com. Google us or use Bing or Netscape if you still have access to that and you even know what that is. And
Alta Vista.
Yes.
InfoSeek.
Mosaic. All these browsers. And but seriously, follow us on YouTube, and we hope you enjoy the content, and add comments. If you have any ideas for what do you think we should discuss the next event, please let us know, and stay safe.
Wow, that was awesome. Killer. Hey, see you guys.